Ki-jun walked into the bakery to order a wedding cake. That was all he intended to do. 5 minutes. A public place. Nothing complicated. The bell above the door rang, sharp enough to cut through the room. Conversation dipped. A laugh trailed off. Someone paused mid-step. It wasn't silence, but it wasn't normal either. The air shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Ki-jun felt it before he understood it. Then he looked up. Senna Hendricks stood behind the counter, alive, not startled, not frozen, just standing there, eyes already on him, as if she had known this moment would arrive someday and had decided long ago how she would meet it. 6 years collapsed into a single breath. Before Ki-jun could move, a small body pressed into her leg. A boy. The movement was quick and instinctive, the way children moved when something felt wrong. Senna's hand dropped immediately to the child's shoulder, firm and familiar. She didn't look down. Her focus stayed on Ki-jun. The boy lifted his head. He looked straight at Ki-jun. And something inside Ki-jun locked. This wasn't the past catching up. This was blood. Before you go any further, understand this. What begins quietly does not stay quiet. This story gets darker, more dangerous, and far more personal than it looks. Welcome to Afro K-Drama. Like, subscribe, and stay with the story. The bakery tried to keep going. A register chimed. Someone asked about flavors. Trays slid across steel. Normal life continued, unaware that something irreversible had just settled into the center of the room. Ki-jun stepped fully inside, the smell of sugar finally reaching him. He stopped at the counter. Senna stayed where she was. The boy stayed close. No one spoke, but the space between them tightened, careful and heavy. Senna's calm was deliberate. Her shoulders were squared, her breathing steady. She had learned how to stay still when panic would only make things worse. Whatever fear she felt stayed buried. The boy's grip tightened once, then loosened. He didn't hide. He didn't smile. He watched Ki-jun with quiet attention, like he was trying to understand where he fit into a picture that was still forming. Ki-jun kept his face neutral. Inside, details aligned fast. Senna alive. A child old enough to stand without fear, 6 years accounted for in silence. He didn't stare at the boy. He measured instead. Height, build, stillness. The resemblance didn't shout. It didn't need to. 6 years ago, Senna had vanished without a body, without answers. Ki-jun had searched until there was nothing left to search. He had accepted absence because the world demanded an ending. She hadn't been gone. She had been living. Senna shifted slightly, stepping just enough between Ki-jun and the boy to block without drawing attention. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't fear. It was instinct, sharpened by years of protecting something fragile. Outside, Ki-jun's men adjusted without a word. A car. Door closed softly. Footsteps repositioned. The street remained calm, unaware that lines were being redrawn inside a small bakery. The room felt smaller. Ki-jun let his gaze lift once more to the boy. The child didn't look away. His expression stayed steady, unafraid, as if he sensed that something important was happening but didn't yet know why. Ki-jun turned from the counter, not rushed, not hesitant. He walked toward the door at the same controlled pace he'd entered with. Behind him, Senna didn't follow. The boy stayed where he was, fingers still hooked into her clothing. The bell rang again as Ki-jun stepped outside. He reached for his phone as he walked, already deciding what needed to happen next. Through the glass, the boy was still watching. Ki-jun didn't slow until he reached the corner. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, crossed the street without looking behind him, and let the bakery disappear into the flow of the city. Cars passed too close. Someone brushed his shoulder and kept walking. A horn sounded, sharp, then faded. The world didn't pause for what had just cracked open. His car waited where it always did. The door opened. He got in. The engine started before he finished sitting. "Stay close," Ki-jun said. The car pulled away, smooth, unremarkable. Inside the bakery, Senna stood still until the bells stopped moving. Only then did she reach out and grip the counter. The boy pressed harder into her leg, sensing the shift without needing words. She rested her hand on his shoulder. "Bag," she said quietly. He moved immediately, disappearing toward the back. Senna flipped the sign and locked the door. No explanations, no glances. The click of the lock sounded final. The back door opened into daylight. She stepped out first. The alley was empty. They walked. Not fast, not slow, just steady. At the corner, Senna paused, listening. Tires, voices, footsteps. Nothing close enough to matter. She crossed. The boy stayed in step beside her, his hand warm in hers, grip firm but calm. 3 streets away, Ki-jun watched through tinted glass. She crossed against the light. "Again," he said. The car passed them once, then again from the opposite direction. Senna didn't turn. She didn't hesitate. She kept moving. Ki-jun leaned forward slightly. She cut into a doorway, waited, then stepped out behind a couple arguing softly. The boy looked up at her. She nodded once. They vanished into the next block. "Wide," Ki-jun said. The car slowed. He stepped out and let the crowd take him. A vendor shouted. A bus hissed. Someone laughed too loudly nearby. Then he saw her again. She burst out of a narrow passage, crossed hard, pulled the boy close, and merged into a cluster of people waiting to cross. Ki-jun followed without closing the distance. Stairs opened ahead. The platform below hummed. Air rushed as a train slid in. Doors opened. Senna moved with the timing of someone who had practiced this. She stepped inside. The boy followed. The doors shut. The train pulled away. Ki-jun stayed where he was. He turned, went back up the stairs, and returned to the car. Traffic swallowed the station. Across town, Senna stepped off 4 stops later. She turned left, then right again. The streets narrowed, shops closed, windows went dark. They reached a building with a narrow entrance and a stairwell that smelled like dust. Senna climbed without rushing. At the top, she unlocked the door and stepped inside, pulling the boy with her. The lock clicked. She stood there for a second. Then she moved. Window, bathroom, bedroom, clear. She went to the kitchen. Rice, water, stove. The boy sat at the table, swinging his legs, watching her. They ate quietly. She wiped his mouth with her thumb. He smiled once and finished his food. She tucked him into bed early. He didn't complain. She sat until his breathing slowed, then closed the door halfway. Outside, a car idled across the street. Ki-jun stood near it, eyes on the building. A man approached and stopped beside him. "She's inside," the man said. Ki-jun nodded. "Alone?" "Yes." "Good." He crossed the street and entered the building. His steps echoed softly as he climbed. He stopped at the door and knocked once, then again. Inside, Senna froze. She didn't move until the second knock. She crossed the room and looked through the peephole. Ki-jun stood there. She unlocked the door and opened it just enough to stand in the frame. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You stayed close," he replied. They stood there, neither moving. "I won't come in," Ki-jun said. She watched his face, then stepped aside just enough to keep the door open. "You scared him," she said. "I didn't touch him." "You didn't have to." His eyes flicked past her, brief and controlled. "He's mine," Ki-jun said. "No," Senna said. "He's ours." A door closed somewhere down the hall. "I'm not taking him," Ki-jun said. "Not tonight." She studied him, searching. She didn't interrupt. "Tomorrow," he said, "we talk." She didn't answer. Ki-jun stepped back and walked down the hall. Senna closed the door and locked it. In the bedroom, the boy shifted. "Mama?" She crossed the room and knelt beside him. "I'm here," she said. Outside, Ki-jun stepped into the night and got into the car. "Tomorrow," he said. The car pulled away. Inside the apartment, Senna lay beside the boy, listening to his breathing as traffic passed below and footsteps moved through the building, the night continuing exactly as it always did. Ki-jun did not leave the street right away. He stayed where the car had dropped him, across from the building, watching lights turn on and off in windows that had nothing to do with him. People came home with grocery bags. A couple argued softly near the entrance. Someone smoked and scrolled on their phone. Life pressed forward without permission. His phone buzzed. Once. He answered it without looking down. "Tomorrow morning," he said. "I want everything active." A pause on the other end. Then, understood. Inside the apartment, Senna did not sleep. She lay still beside the boy, listening to the rhythm of his breathing until it settled into something deep and even. Only then did she ease herself out of bed and move quietly into the kitchen. She packed without turning on the light. Not everything, just enough. Documents first, then clothes, then the small envelope she kept hidden behind the spice rack. She hesitated over it, then slid it into the bag anyway. The zipper sounded too loud. She stopped, waited, then finished closing it slowly. She checked the window again. The car across the street was still there. That was new. At dawn, the building woke early. Doors opened. Footsteps echoed. Someone argued on the stairs. A child cried in another apartment. Senna moved through the noise like she belonged to it, dressed, hair pulled back, face calm. The boy sat at the table, feet swinging. "School?" he asked. She paused. "Yes," she said. "But we're leaving early." He nodded and reached for his bag. Down on the street, Ki-jun watched the building empty itself floor by floor. He recognized patterns quickly. Tenants, workers, routine. Then he saw her. She stepped out with the boy at her side, not rushing, not hiding. She was leaving in daylight. Ki-jun straightened. "She's moving," he said. The car door opened behind him. He got in as Senna crossed the street, the boy's hand tucked into hers. She didn't look around. She didn't scan. That worried him more than if she had. They followed at a distance. 2 blocks in, Senna turned into a narrow street lined with small offices and clinics. She slowed, checked her phone, then stopped outside a building with a faded sign and glass doors. The boy tugged her hand. "Why here?" he asked. She knelt in front of him, eye level, voice low. "We need papers." "For what?" "So things don't change without us knowing." He accepted that and followed her inside. Ki-jun got out of the car. "Here?" one of his men asked quietly. "Yes." The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old paper. Senna took a number and sat with the boy beside her. He leaned into her shoulder, bored, patient. A woman behind the desk looked up. "Name?" Senna answered without hesitation. Ki-jun heard it clearly from the doorway. It wasn't the name he knew. Something tightened. He stepped back out. "She changed it," he said. That was the first concrete thing he hadn't anticipated. Inside, the boy swung his legs and watched people come and go. When his name was called, he stood and followed Senna down the hall. In the small office, Senna slid documents across the desk. The woman skimmed them, then looked up. "This isn't complete," she said. "You'll need the father's." Senna didn't let her finish. "He's not involved." The woman hesitated. "Legally, I still need—" "He's not involved," Senna repeated. The boy looked between them. The woman sighed and typed something into the computer. "I can process part of this. The rest will flag." "Flag how?" "It'll trigger a request." Senna nodded. "That's fine." The word request echoed. Outside, Ki-jun's phone buzzed again. "Her name change is registered," his man said, "but the child's isn't complete. There's a hold." "Why?" "Missing consent." Ki-jun closed his eyes once. Inside the office, the woman stood. "Someone will contact you." "When?" "Soon." Senna thanked her, took the papers, and walked out with the boy. They didn't stop. They headed straight for the train station. Ki-jun followed. This time, he didn't keep his distance. On the platform, the crowd pressed close. The boy held Senna's coat. She kept one arm around him, eyes forward. Ki-jun stepped into view. The boy saw him first. He didn't flinch. He stared. Then he frowned. "You're the man from the bakery," he said. The words landed louder than any shout. People turned. Senna froze. Ki-jun stopped 3 feet away. "Yes," he said. The boy tilted his head. "You look like my pictures." Senna's hand tightened on his shoulder. Ki-jun's breath slowed. "What pictures?" he asked. The boy pointed at his chest. "Mama's." That was it. That was the moment the stalemate broke. Senna straightened. "We're leaving." Ki-jun didn't move. "We need to talk." "Not here." The train pulled in, doors opening. The boy looked up at Senna. "Is he?" "No," she said too quickly. Ki-jun stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You already brought this into the open." She met his eyes. "You did that the moment you walked in." The doors began to close. Ki-jun reached out, not touching, just close enough. "If you get on that train, everything changes." Senna hesitated. Then she stepped back. The door shut. The train pulled away. The boy pressed his face to the glass, watching Ki-jun disappear down the platform. He didn't wave. He remembered. That afternoon, the call came. Senna listened without speaking. "Yes," she said finally. "I understand." She hung up and sat still. The boy watched her. "What happened?" he asked. "They want more papers," she said. "From who?" She didn't answer. Across town, Ki-jun sat in a conference room with his men. Files lay open. Screens glowed. "She triggered a formal request," someone said. "School registration, medical records. It'll pull your name." Ki-jun nodded. "Then we don't avoid it." "You want to be listed?" "Yes." Silence. "That's irreversible," another man said. "I know." The decision settled without ceremony. That evening, Ki-jun stood outside the apartment again. This time, he didn't knock. He waited. Inside, Senna watched the shadow under the door. The boy sat beside her on the couch. "That's him," he said. She closed her eyes. The phone in her hand vibrated. "Unknown number." She answered. "We need to set terms," Ki-jun said calmly. "Now." She looked at the boy. He was listening. "No more showing up," she said. "No more watching." "Agreed. No decisions about him without me." "Yes." A pause. "And he doesn't come near you," she added. "Not yet." Ki-jun exhaled slowly. "Then we meet where he can see us both." She hesitated. "Tomorrow," he said. She ended the call. The boy leaned against her side. "Is he going to be around?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "For how long?" She didn't know. Outside, Ki-jun stepped away from the door and into the waiting car. Tomorrow was no longer an idea. It was scheduled. Ki-jun arrived before the morning fully decided what it was going to be. The street was quieter than it had been the night before. Fewer voices, fewer doors opening. The building looked the same, but it no longer felt like a place that could disappear into the background. A man stood across the road pretending to check his phone. Another leaned against a parked car a little too comfortably. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Enough. Inside the apartment, Senna noticed it the moment she pulled the curtain back. She didn't sigh. She didn't curse. She just let the fabric fall back into place and stood there for a second longer than usual. The boy sat at the table with his cereal untouched. They're still there, he said. She turned slowly. Who? He shrugged. The men. She didn't correct him. She crossed the room, set a hand on his head, and kissed his hair once. Then she went to the door and unlocked it. Kijun was already in the hallway. Not alone. 2 men stood back far enough to pretend they weren't listening. Senna opened the door fully this time. She didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. We need to leave, Kijun said. No, she replied. This building is done. She stepped aside so he could see the boy. He was watching from the table, spoon still in his hand. You promised, she said quietly. No showing up. I promised no surprises, Kijun said. This is prevention. She looked past him, down the hall. A door across from hers was open now. Someone stood inside, pretending to tidy shoes. Her jaw tightened. When? She asked. Now. The boy pushed his chair back. Are we moving again? Senna didn't answer right away. Kijun walked in without being told. He stopped a few feet from the table and crouched slightly. Not enough to loom, not enough to kneel. We're going somewhere safer, he said. The boy studied him. Is it because of me? The question landed hard and clean. Senna's fingers dug into her palm. Kijun didn't look away. It's because people are curious. The boy nodded once. I don't like curious people. Neither do I, Kijun said. That was the moment Senna lost something she wouldn't get back. Not the apartment, not the street. Control. She packed while Kijun stood near the door, his presence filling the space whether she acknowledged it or not. The men outside moved when she moved, followed when she followed. The boy watched all of it without speaking. When they stepped outside, a woman from the floor below froze halfway up the stairs. Oh, she said, you're leaving? Yes, Senna answered. The woman smiled nervously. That's good. Senna didn't wait for the rest. Down on the street, a black SUV pulled in smoothly. The door opened before they reached it. The boy hesitated. He looked at Senna. She nodded. He climbed in. That was the second thing she lost. Inside the car, the windows were dark. The street disappeared. The boy pressed his forehead to the glass anyway, trying to see through it. Why can't I see? He asked. For privacy, Kijun said. The boy thought about that. I like seeing. So do I, Kijun replied. Sometimes you can't. The car moved. Across town, Kijun's phone vibrated again. This time he checked it. A name he didn't expect. He answered. Yes, he said. A pause. No, he said. Not today. Another pause. We'll talk soon. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Senna noticed. Who was that? She asked. Someone who noticed me, Kijun replied. They didn't speak after that. The house they arrived at wasn't large. It wasn't hidden either. It sat behind a gate that opened, without stopping. Inside, the air felt different, quieter, controlled. The boy stepped out and looked around. Is this yours? He asked. Yes, Kijun said. Do people know you live here? Yes. The boy nodded again. That's worse. Senna followed him inside. The rooms were clean, neutral, nothing personal. She walked through them once, then again, checking corners out of habit. You'll stay here, Kijun said. For now. For how long? She asked. He didn't answer. That was the third thing she lost. Later, after the boy was settled in a room that wasn't his, Senna stood at the kitchen counter and stared at the wall. This was not the agreement, she said. There was no agreement, Kijun replied. There was a delay. You brought men to my door. I brought them before someone else did. She turned. You think that makes it better? I think it makes him safer. She crossed her arms. At the cost of what? Kijun met her gaze. Your timing. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. You took that already. Across the city, a man sat in a different office and looked at the same name Ki-jun had answered earlier. So he's claiming him, the man said. Someone else nodded. He didn't deny it. Interesting, the man replied. Back in the house, the boy stood in the hallway listening. He heard his name. He heard the word papers. He heard silence where answers should have been. He didn't interrupt. He went back to his room and closed the door. That night, Senna lay awake in a bed that didn't belong to her. Cameras hummed softly somewhere outside the room. She counted the sounds, the shifts, the quiet footsteps. She had slept unseen for years. That was gone. In the morning, Ki-jun handed her a folder. "What's this?" she asked. "Forms," he said. "School, medical, travel." She flipped through them. "And this?" she asked, tapping a page. "Consent." Her hand stopped. She looked up at him. "You said you wouldn't take him." "I'm not," Ki-jun replied. "I'm being named." "That's not the same. It is in the system." She closed the folder slowly. "You want me to sign this? I need you to. I don't trust it. I know." She stared at the papers. The boy watched from the doorway. "What happens if she doesn't?" he asked. Ki-jun answered without looking at him. "Then other people decide." The boy frowned. "I don't like other people deciding." Neither did Senna. She picked up the pen. That was the fourth thing she lost. Later, when the folder was gone and the house felt smaller than before, Senna stood at the window and watched the gate open and close. "This doesn't feel safe," she said. Ki-jun stood beside her, not touching. "It is. It feels watched." "It is." She turned to him. "You think. Those are the same thing." He didn't deny it. In another room, the boy sat on the floor with his toys spread out. He lined them up carefully, then moved one out of place. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he put it back. That afternoon, Ki-jun received another call. This one he didn't take in front of Senna. He stepped outside. "Yes," he said. A pause. "No," he said again. "I didn't authorize that." Another pause. He looked back at the house. "Then tell them to wait," he said. "Or tell them I won't." When he went back inside, Senna was waiting. "Someone's pushing," she said. "Yes. Who?" "Someone who doesn't like waiting." She nodded. "That makes two of us." That evening, the boy sat at the table and drew quietly. Senna leaned over his shoulder. "What's that?" she asked. "A map," he said. "Of where?" He pointed. "Where we were, where we are, and where he stands." She followed the eyes-ina lines. "Why?" she asked. "So I know who moves first." She straightened slowly. Across the room, Ki-jun watched them both. Ki-jun sensed it before anyone tried to explain it to him. The house still ran smoothly, too smoothly. Instructions were followed before they finished being spoken. Doors opened at the exact second expected. Schedules aligned without reminders. That kind of precision didn't come from trust. It came from anticipation. He stood in the corridor and watched one of the guards adjust the boy's jacket collar. "Cold this morning," the man said lightly. The boy didn't resist. He didn't thank him either. When the guard stepped away, the boy tugged the collar back down himself and continued walking. Ki-jun watched the correction, then the correction of the correction. He didn't comment. In the kitchen, Senna stared at the new schedule placed neatly beside the sink. The paper was fresh, crisp. Updated again, earlier, wake up. Reduced outdoor, window. Study time extended by 30 minutes. Nothing dramatic, everything deliberate. She folded it and slid it into a drawer. "What happens if we don't follow it?" she asked. The man by the door answered without discomfort. "Then it's recorded." "Recorded how?" "For safety." She held his gaze long enough that his eyes flicked away. Later that morning, she woke the boy 5 minutes late on purpose. Not enough to trigger anything obvious, just enough to test the edges. Nothing happened. No message, no knock, no reminder. At breakfast, the boy ate slowly, glancing at the camera above the counter instead of his bowl. "Does it watch all the time?" he asked. Senna didn't look up. "No." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. At noon, a knock came at the study door. "Routine check," a voice said. "Routine of what?" Senna asked, opening the door. "Alignment." She stepped aside. The check lasted less than 2 minutes. Nothing was moved. Nothing was asked. When the door closed again, the schedule was back on the counter. Revised. That was when Senna understood something she hadn't wanted to name before. This wasn't correction. It was conditioning. She didn't know yet what that would cost. That afternoon, she tried something smaller. She took the boy toward the rear garden instead of the front path. No sign forbade it. No rule marked it wrong. Just a different direction. They made it halfway down the gravel when a voice came through the earpiece clipped to her collar. "Please return to the designated area." She stopped. The boy looked up at her. "Why?" She hesitated. "Because they asked us to." "Did we do something bad?" "No." "Then why are we turning back?" She didn't answer. She turned. Behind them, footsteps adjusted. From the balcony that evening, Kijun watched the lights come on across the property. "You're pushing," he said. "Lightly," Senna replied. "And you're being corrected." "Yes." He leaned against the wall. "This doesn't end with you winning." "I'm not trying to win," she said. "I'm trying to see how far it goes." He studied her. "That's how people lose." "So is pretending you don't notice the cage." In the next room, the boy lay awake, listening. The following morning, Kijun lost something he rarely lost: time. He learned of a legal review only after it had already been scheduled. No urgency, no threat, just movement without his approval. "Why wasn't I informed?" he asked calmly. The advisor hesitated. "It was procedural." "You don't move procedurally around me. Not usually." That word stayed with him. Later that day, Senna overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. 2 men stood near the stairwell, voices low. "She's compliant enough," one said. "For now," the other replied. "If she becomes a liability—" Footsteps approached, and the rest was swallowed. Senna didn't confront anyone. She didn't mention it to Kijun. She stored it where she kept everything she might need later. At dinner, the boy interrupted. "Who tells them what to do?" he asked Kijun. "I do," Kijun answered. The boy nodded. "Then why don't they listen to you all the time?" The room went still. "Because systems don't listen," Kijun said. "They operate." The boy considered that. "Then systems don't care." No one contradicted him. At the time, it sounded like observation. It wasn't. That night, Senna lay awake longer than usual. The house hummed softly. Cameras adjusted. A guard shifted outside her door. Privacy wasn't gone. It had been replaced. She understood then that something irreversible had already begun, even if no one had named it yet. The next morning, she stood by the gate with her bag on her shoulder. "We're going out," she said. Kijun looked at the boy, then back at her. "For how long?" "Long enough to breathe." "That's not—" "I know." He watched her closely. 10 minutes. "Without escort." "No." "Then we don't go." They stared at each other. 5, he said finally. "Visible perimeter." She didn't thank him. Outside, the air felt sharper, less padded. The boy breathed in deeply. "This feels real," he said. "Yes," Senna replied, though she wasn't sure anymore what real meant. When they returned, there were 2 additional men stationed near the gate. That was the cost. That night, Ki-jun received another call. "You're compressing timelines," his associate said. "It's attracting attention." "I know." "Then slow down." "I can't." A pause. "For the first time," the man said carefully, "that decision may not be yours." Ki-jun ended the call without responding. Senna discovered the document by accident. It was tucked into the folder she'd already signed weeks earlier. Same formatting, same language, different clause. Emergency custodial authority, temporary, conditional. She closed the folder slowly. She didn't confront Ki-jun. Not yet. At dinner, the boy asked, "If I get sick, who decides what happens?" "I do," Senna said too quickly. Ki-jun said nothing. The boy looked between them. That silence did more damage than an argument would have. That night, Senna sat alone at the table, pen resting near the folder. Signing meant safety. Not signing meant exposure. At the time, it felt like control. It was preparation. In the morning, she handed the folder back. "I won't sign this," she said. Ki-jun read it again anyway. "This protects him. It removes me. It limits you. That's worse." Silence stretched. "If you refuse," he said, "others will step in." "Then let them," she replied. "At least I'll see who." That was the first time she said no without hesitation. Ki-jun chose delay. The consequence arrived quietly. The boy's school enrollment was accelerated. No discussion. No appeal. That afternoon, Ki-jun learned a rival firm had requested access to the same records. Visibility had begun to leak. That evening, the boy overheard something through a door left slightly ajar. "You can't keep shielding her," a voice said. "She's the weakness," another replied. He didn't repeat the words. He asked instead, "Are people watching because of me?" "People watch because they're afraid," Senna said. "Of what?" "Of losing control." He nodded slowly. Later that night, Ki-jun drew a line. "He doesn't leave the property without approval." "No," Senna said immediately. "You don't make legal decisions alone." "No. This ends if it already ended," she said. "You just didn't notice when." They stared at each other. Ki-jun chose. "Tomorrow," he said. "We meet with counsel. All of us." The boy looked up. "Me too?" "Yes," Ki-jun said. That wasn't a warning. It was a commitment. And in another building, far from the house, a file was opened. Not urgently, not loudly, but officially. Someone read the names, smiled once, and forwarded it upward. What felt like control had been preparation all along, and now the preparation was complete. The knock came without warning, not polite, not hesitant. 3 sharp impacts against the door, close enough together to erase any illusion of choice. Senna was already moving by the second knock. She reached the door before fear could catch up, hands steady as she pulled it open. The hallway was full. 2 officials stood at the front, neutral faces, badges visible, documents already raised. Behind them were men she recognized, not guards she could speak to, not strangers she could dismiss. People placed there long before this morning. Ki-jun stood slightly to the side, phone pressed to his ear, his attention split in a way that felt wrong. "Miss Hendricks," the woman said, "we're here regarding your son." The boy stepped into the doorway beside Senna, barefoot, blinking against the light. "Why are there so many people?" he asked. The woman glanced down at him, then back at Senna. "This won't take long." "No," Senna said. "You don't get to decide that." "This is a temporary directive," the woman continued, lifting the document higher. "We need the child to accompany us for assessment." Senna felt something cold slide through her chest. "No," she said again, louder. "You don't take my child." The man beside the woman spoke next. "This has already been executed." Ki-jun stepped forward. "By who?" Emergency Oversight Committee, the woman replied calmly. Ki-jun took the paper, scanned it quickly, then stopped breathing for a moment. This went live an hour ago, he said. I wasn't notified. You were listed, the woman said. Notification is not consent. The boy looked up at Ki-jun. Are they taking me somewhere? He asked. Ki-jun opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That silence broke something that could not be repaired. They said it's temporary, the man added. He'll be returned today. Temporary where? The boy asked. A supervised facility, the man replied. The word facility landed like a crack in glass. Senna stepped in front of him. You are not touching him. Hands reached forward anyway. Gentle, professional, decided. The boy didn't cry. He didn't pull away. He looked at Senna and asked quietly, Did I do something wrong? No, she said, voice betraying her despite every effort. You didn't. They took him. The door closed softly behind them. The sound was small, final. Senna stood frozen, staring at the empty space he had occupied seconds ago. Ki-jun lowered his phone. This wasn't meant to move yet, he said. She turned on him slowly. You built this, she said. You told me it was protection. It is, he replied. I didn't authorize this escalation. That doesn't matter, she said. It happened. He dialed again. The call failed. Across town, the boy sat in a quiet room with white walls and soft chairs. A woman offered him juice. He declined politely. A man asked him his name. He answered. Another asked how old he was. He answered that too. They spoke around him like he wasn't there. Temporary, review, best interest. He listened. When Ki-jun arrived, the boy looked up. You were late, he said. Ki-jun swallowed. I'm here now. The boy nodded once. They said you know the rules. Yes. Why didn't the rules stop this? Ki-jun didn't answer. By late afternoon, the boy was returned. No apology. No explanation. Just a handover at the door. Senna took him back without a word and pulled him into her arms, holding him longer than necessary, longer than appropriate, until his breathing slowed. That night, she didn't let him out of her sight. Ki-jun stood by the window, phone buzzing repeatedly in his hand. You promised, she said quietly. I tried, he replied. You failed. The words landed clean and final. Later, when the boy slept, Senna turned to Ki-jun fully. You built something that can take my child without asking, she said. You don't get to call that safety. It wasn't supposed to move like that, he said, but it did. Yes. And you still want me to trust it? He hesitated. That's your answer, she said. He stepped closer. If you pull away now, it gets worse. She laughed once, sharp. For who? For all of us. No, she said. For you. The boy murmured in his sleep. Senna, softened only for him. Then she hardened again. You chose power over trust, she said, and you lost both. Ki-jun stared at her. You think I wanted this? I think you thought you could manage it, she replied. You were wrong. The next morning, the boy asked a question that shifted everything. Am I allowed to say no? He asked at breakfast. Senna froze. Ki-jun looked up slowly. Say no to what? To leaving, the boy said. To strangers. To decisions. Silence filled the room. You're a child, Ki-jun said carefully. I know, the boy replied, but they still moved me. Senna reached for him. You don't have to decide anything right now. He nodded. But someone else will. That was the fracture. Trust didn't shatter loudly. It thinned until it couldn't carry weight. Later that day, Senna refused the next request outright. No, she said into the phone. You don't schedule him without me. This is procedural. No, You're obstructing. No. She ended the call. Ki-jun watched from across the room. You're escalating, he said. I'm reclaiming, she replied. That night, Ki-jun admitted something he had delayed too long. There's a hearing, he said, in 2 weeks. Senna's breath caught. About what? Custodial oversight. You knew. Yes. You waited. Yes. The boy stood in the hallway, unseen. 2 weeks. He counted the days silently on his fingers. The next morning, Ki-jun was named, formally. An official notice arrived. Neutral language, absolute consequences. His name attached to oversight, responsibility, scrutiny. The system turned its eye back on its architect. Senna read it once and handed it back. There's no clean exit now, she said. I know. The boy packed his bag that afternoon without being told. What are you doing? Senna asked. Being ready, he said. For what? He shrugged. For when they decide again. That night, Ki-jun sat alone and stared at the calendar. 2 weeks. No more delay, no more deniability. Outside the house, a car waited longer than necessary. Inside, Senna lay awake beside the boy, listening to his breathing, counting the seconds until morning. The clock had started. It was no longer something they felt. It was something they moved inside. The intake office released them with a thin packet clipped together and a follow-up date circled in blue ink. Not a decision, not a verdict. A marker. Something placed in the ground that would be difficult to step around later. Outside, the boy squinted at the sky. Everyone talked like they already knew us, he said. Senna didn't answer right away. She was watching how people passed them on the sidewalk, how eyes lingered a fraction longer than before, how Ki-jun's presence didn't clear space the way it used to. It narrowed it. That afternoon, the school insisted on a meeting, not a request, a requirement. The office smelled like dry erase markers and old carpet. Children's artwork lined the walls in cheerful colors that felt out of place. The boy sat in a chair that was too small for him now, knees angled awkwardly, hands folded. A counselor smiled too often. We just want to make sure he feels supported, she said. Supported by who? Senna asked. The counselor glanced at Ki-jun, then back at Senna. By the adults involved. The boy raised his hand. Yes? The counselor said, surprised. Do I have to talk? He asked. Only if you want to, she replied quickly. He nodded. Then I don't. Something shifted behind the counselor's smile. Ki-jun leaned forward. He's not refusing care. He's exercising agency. That's unusual at his age, the counselor replied. Maybe, Ki-jun said, but it's not dangerous. The counselor wrote something down anyway. When they left, Senna noticed the note being placed in a folder already thicker than it should have been. That was the first public collision. No shouting, no force, just a quiet adjustment in how they were seen. That night, the boy didn't draw. He lined up his belongings instead. Shoes by the door, backpack zipped, jacket folded. You don't have to do that, Senna said. I know, he replied, but it helps me think. About what? About where things go. She sat beside him. And where do you think we go? He thought for a long moment. Somewhere they can't change the rules halfway. Her chest tightened. The next day, he told the truth to the wrong person. Not everything, just enough. He mentioned it to a substitute teacher who asked too many questions and listened too closely. He said it plainly, without drama. They took me once, he said. They said it was temporary. The teacher's pen stopped moving. Who did? She asked. People with badges, he said. They talk nice. The call came before school ended. Social services wanted clarification. Again, Ki-jun heard about it secondhand. They're escalating, one of his advisors said, quietly. I didn't authorize that, Ki-jun replied. That's the problem, the advisor said. You don't authorize everything anymore. Senna knew before anyone told her. She felt it in the way the boy watched doors now, in the way he asked fewer questions but listened harder, in the way he corrected himself mid-sentence, choosing words carefully like adults did. That evening, the three of them sat at the table together. We need to present unity, Ki-jun said, publicly. Senna didn't look at him. That's not the same as trust. I know, but you're asking for it anyway. Yes. She stared at the table, the grain of the wood, the small scratch near, the edge. What exactly are you asking me to agree to? She asked. A shared narrative, he said. Consistency. Calm. And if that narrative isn't true, then we choose which truth keeps him safest. The boy looked up from his plate. Are you lying for me? He asked. Ki-jun answered too quickly. We're simplifying. The boy nodded slowly. That's still lying. No one corrected him. They went to the next meeting together. That was the performance. Senna smiled when required. Ki-jun spoke when needed. They sat close enough to look aligned. It worked. The official agreed to delay any immediate action pending further review. A point gained, a breath bought. It should have felt like relief. It felt wrong. Outside, Ki-jun exhaled. That went well. Senna didn't respond. Later, the boys said, You both sounded like strangers. That night, Senna lay awake staring at the ceiling. She understood then that shielding was no longer possible, only shaping. The next notice arrived sooner than expected. A preliminary hearing date was moved up. Days, not weeks. Ki-jun read the email twice, then a third time. They're compressing timelines, he said. They always were, Senna replied. The boy counted days on his fingers again. 3, he said. 4. No one stopped him. The reporter called the following afternoon. Just one question, just confirmation. Ki-jun declined comment. The name was already circulating. That evening, Senna stood at the sink, washing dishes that were already clean. There's no safe version left, she said quietly. Ki-jun leaned against the counter. There never was. The boy stood in the doorway. If I say something, he asked, will it make it worse? Senna turned. What would you say? The truth, he replied. Ki-jun stiffened. That depends on where, he said carefully. The boy nodded. That's what I thought. The call that night didn't come from anyone they knew. It came from an external office. Neutral tone, firm timeline. An investigation had been opened. Formal, documented, independent. Ki-jun closed his eyes. This isn't intimidation, the voice said. It's procedure. After the call ended, the house felt smaller. Senna sat down heavily. They're not afraid of you anymore, she said. Ki-jun nodded. No. That's dangerous. Yes. The boy packed his bag again. This time, Senna didn't stop him. What are you preparing for? She asked. He thought carefully. For having to explain myself. That broke something in her chest. The final notice arrived the next morning. Stamped. Dated. Hearing in 48 hours. No extensions, no appeals. Ki-jun was formally named as an involved party, publicly. He stared at the document for a long time. This ends my ability to intervene quietly, he said. Senna looked at him, then intervene honestly. The boy stood between them. Do I get to talk? He asked. The room went still. At the hearing? Ki-jun asked. Yes. That's not typical, Ki-jun said. The boy nodded. Neither is this. That was when Senna realized the trap fully. Staying would cost him. Leaving would cost her. Silence would cost both. She didn't decide yet, but she stopped pretending there was a version where no one paid. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, the clock ticked. 2 days, and nothing could slow it now. 2 days later, the hearing room filled without ceremony. There was no build-up, no warning that felt adequate. Chairs scraped softly against the floor as people took their seats. A recorder was placed in the center of the table and switched on, the red light steady, indifferent. Names were read aloud, each one flattening whoever answered into something official. Papers were distributed. Pens clicked open. The clock on the wall moved forward without hesitation. Senna sat straight, shoulders squared, hands folded neatly in front of her. She had chosen her clothes carefully, nothing that could be described as defiant or fragile. She looked like someone who expected to be taken seriously. Whether that expectation would be honored was no longer in her control. The boy sat beside her. His feet reached the floor now. His backpack rested between his ankles, zipped, heavy with things he had decided mattered. He watched the room closely, eyes moving from face to face, registering who smiled, who didn't, who avoided looking at him altogether. Across the table, Ki-jun sat alone. There was no one beside him, no quiet presence to suggest alliance. His name was printed on a placard in front of him, clean and undeniable. No title followed it, no explanation. Just his name, exposed to interpretation. "This hearing is now in session," the chairwoman said, her voice even, practiced. "We are convened to review custodial oversight and temporary placement considerations regarding the minor." Temporary, placement, considerations, words chosen to soften what they were about to do. A summary was read into the record. Dates, observations, reports, flags raised by agencies that had never seen the boy laugh or heard him sleep. Each sentence sounded reasonable. Together they formed something heavy. Senna listened without interruption. She focused on breathing evenly, on keeping her face still. She recognized the tactic being used: strip emotion, isolate behavior, turn context into risk. When the summary ended, the chairwoman looked up. "Ms. Hendricks, you may respond." Senna stood. "My son has lived with me his entire life," she said. Her voice did not shake. "He has been healthy. He has been safe. He has been educated. Any instability he has experienced has been introduced by systems that decided they knew him better than I do." A pen paused. "I did not withhold information out of deception," she continued. "I withheld it out of protection. There is a difference." She sat back down. The chairwoman nodded once. "Mr. Park." Ki-jun stood slowly. He did not adjust his jacket or clear his throat. He did not try to soften his presence. "I was listed as an involved party," he said. "Not because I requested involvement, but because my name was attached to a system that moved faster than intended." A murmur passed through the room. "My intent," he went on, "was to shield. I accept that intent does not negate consequence." That acknowledgement landed harder than any denial would have. The chairwoman folded her hands. "We will now hear from the child if he is willing." Senna's hand twitched toward him, instinctive, protective. She stopped herself before it reached his sleeve. The boy stood. He didn't look at Senna. He didn't look at Ki-jun. He faced the table. "They took me once," he said plainly. "They said it was temporary." A pen scratched across paper. "It didn't feel temporary," he added. The chairwoman leaned forward slightly. "Can you tell us why?" "Because no one told me when it would end," he said, "and no one asked me if I understood." Silence stretched. "They talk around me," he continued, "like I'm not there, like I won't remember." He paused, thinking carefully. "I remember everything." Someone shifted in their seat. "I'm not scared of rules," he said. "I just want to know what they are before they happen." The recorder hummed steadily. "Thank you," the chairwoman said after a moment. "You may sit." He returned to his chair, calm, composed. His backpack brushed Senna's ankle as he sat. She did not reach for him. She did not speak. She let the truth stand where it had fallen. The decision was entered into record. Temporary custodial oversight approved. Supervised placement to begin immediately. Structured visitation to be scheduled. Review set for 30 days. No raised voices, no visible reaction, just ink on paper. The meeting adjourned. Outside the room, the hallway felt too bright. The boy looked up at Senna. "Is this the part where I go?" "Yes," she said. "Today?" "Yes." He nodded once. "Okay." The transfer happened that evening. No force, no chaos. A caseworker waited by the door, polite, careful. The boy hugged Senna quickly, firmly, as if afraid of lingering too long. "I'll count days," he said. She smiled because she had to. When the door closed, the sound was small, final enough. The apartment felt wrong immediately, too quiet, too open. Senna stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter. She realized she was still holding his lunch container in her hand. Kijun remained by the window, phone dark. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said quietly. She didn't turn. "It happened." He nodded. "I know." That night, the absence settled. Not as pain, but as space that refused to be filled. The next morning, Senna woke early out of habit. She set the kettle on. She reached for a second cup, then stopped. She went to the visitation center later that day. The boy was waiting when she arrived, sitting straight-backed, hands folded just like he had in the hearing room. "You're early," he said. "I always am," she replied. They talked about small things, books, a drawing he was working on, the rules he had learned. "They tell me the schedule now," he said. "I write it down." "That's good," she said. "It helps me feel ready." When time was up, he packed his bag without being asked. She watched him walk away without looking back. That was the cost. It didn't scream, it settled, and it was permanent enough to matter. The next visits followed the same pattern. Same room, same table, same chair placed just far enough away to remind them this wasn't home. The boy adapted faster than anyone expected. He learned the rhythm of the place, the way time was announced without clocks, the way adults signaled endings with their bodies before they used words. Senna learned too. She learned which questions delayed things and which accelerated them. She learned how to speak without giving them material to record. She learned to sit still while someone else watched her child breathe. Kijun did not attend every visit. When he did, the room changed. Not dramatically, subtly. The staff became careful, voices lowered, decisions were deferred, and afterward consequences followed quietly. A supervisor requested clarification. A note appeared in the file. A conversation ended sooner than expected. Kijun noticed the pattern before anyone acknowledged it. "Your presence complicates," the supervisor said one afternoon, not unkindly. "It invites assumptions." "About what?" Kijun asked. "About influence," she replied. He nodded once. "Then I'll step back." Senna heard about it later. "You don't have to," she said. "I do," he replied, "if staying costs him time with you." It was the first thing he gave up without trying to negotiate. The adjustment was immediate. Visits became more procedural, less flexible, less patient. The boy noticed. "You're not sitting over there anymore," he said during one visit, glancing at the empty chair. "No," Kijun replied. "Did you do something wrong?" "No," he said. "I did something obvious." The boy considered that. "That happens?" "Yes," Kijun agreed. That night, the press moved closer, not loudly, not directly. A question here, a confirmation request there, a name appearing in the wrong place. Kijun's phone rang less often from people who wanted favors and more often from people who wanted distance. Power, it turned out, didn't leave in one motion. It thinned. The first real cost, came on a Tuesday. The schedule changed without warning. Senna arrived for her visit and was told it would be shorter. "Why?" she asked. "Resource constraints," the staff member replied. "That wasn't the agreement. This is the adjustment." The boy watched their exchange closely. "It's okay," he said. "I already said what I needed to." Senna knelt in front of him. "You don't have to make it easier for them." He shrugged. "I'm making it easier for me." That sentence followed her home. Later that week, Ki-jun received the formal notice. A board review, not a threat, not a charge. A review. He read it carefully, then set it aside. This was the loss that didn't show on paper. Meetings that no longer included him. Decisions made without his input. Doors that opened slower. He had built systems to move quietly. Now they moved without him. The boy adapted again. He stopped packing his bag for every visit. He started leaving some things behind. "What if they lose them?" Senna asked. "They won't," he replied. "They lose people, not things." She didn't know what to say to that. One afternoon, during a supervised walk in the courtyard, he asked a question no one had prepared for. "If I don't go back," he said, "do you still come?" Senna's breath caught. "Yes." "Every time?" "Yes." He nodded, satisfied. "Okay." The supervisor pretended not to hear. The next ruling came quietly. No courtroom, no hearing. A document emailed at the end of the day. Visitation hours reduced. Communication monitored. Review extended. On paper, it looked reasonable. In life, it meant fewer mornings together. Fewer ordinary moments. That was the thing that disappeared. Normalcy. Ki-jun read the document once. "This is my fault," he said. Senna didn't argue. "I built something that knows how to close ranks," he continued. "I taught it how." "Yes," she said. "You did." He nodded. "I can't undo it." "No," she agreed. "But you can stop feeding it." He made another call that night. This one ended something permanently. The next week, his name disappeared from a board he had once chaired. It didn't make headlines. It didn't need to. The boy noticed the change before anyone explained it. "You're not busy like before," he said during a visit. "No," Ki-jun replied. "Is that bad?" He considered the question. "It depends on what you measure." The boy nodded. "Then maybe it's good." Senna watched them carefully. Later, when they were alone, she said, "You didn't have to give that up." "Yes," he replied. "I did." Time continued. The boy learned new routines, new faces, new expectations. He became careful with words, not quiet, precise. During one visit, he asked Senna, "If I get bigger, do they give me more choices?" She swallowed. "Eventually." "When?" "When they trust you." He nodded. "Then I'll be patient." That patience hurt more than anger would have. The absence settled deeper. It wasn't loud grief. It was subtraction. A seat empty at dinner. Shoes untouched by the door. A calendar with fewer marks. One evening, Senna found herself standing in his room, touching the edge of his bed like it might vanish if she didn't. She didn't cry. She closed the door and turned off the light. The review date arrived again. Nothing changed. The cost was confirmed. On the way out of the building, the boy stopped and looked up at Senna. "This is the rule now," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And we follow it?" "Yes." He nodded once. "Then it's real." Outside, Ki-jun waited, no longer inside any room that decided things. "You were right," he said quietly. "Power doesn't protect what it claims to." Senna looked at the boy. "No, it protects itself." The boy adjusted his backpack. "When do we stop counting days?" he asked. Senna knelt to meet his eyes. "When you don't need to anymore." He thought about that. "Okay." They walked away from the building together, not because the situation had improved, but because there was nowhere else to stand. What had been taken was gone. What remained had to be lived with, and none of it could be undone now. The new routine didn't announce itself. It settled. Morning came at the same hour, but it no longer carried urgency. Senna learned which days were visits and which were waiting. She learned how to move through the quiet without treating it like an enemy. Coffee tasted the same. The city sounded the same. Only the space beside her had changed. On visit days, she left early. She didn't rush. She didn't linger. She arrived exactly on time. The boy waited for her now instead of watching for her. That difference mattered. It meant he trusted the rhythm. It meant he had stopped, fearing surprise. They sat together at the same table, the same distance apart, every time. He told her about school assignments, about a book he was reading, about a game another child had taught him. Ordinary things. Important things. "How long is this one?" he asked once, pointing to the clock. "An hour," she replied. He nodded. "That's enough." It wasn't a lie, it was an adjustment. Ki-jun came less often, and when he did, he stayed back. Not out of absence, but intention. He no longer tried to shape the room. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He didn't correct phrasing or suggest alternatives. He listened. That had become his role. One afternoon, the boy looked at him and said, "You're different now." Ki-jun smiled faintly. "How?" "You wait," the boy replied. "Before, you moved first." Ki-jun thought about that. Is waiting better? The boy shrugged. It feels quieter. Senna watched the exchange carefully. Quiet didn't mean safe, but it meant honest. The final review came without spectacle. No raised voices, no sudden reversals, no mercy dressed as generosity. The ruling stood. Custody unchanged. Oversight reduced slightly. Communication rules clarified. The language was firm but clean. No threats, no promises. It wasn't freedom. It was structure. Outside the building, Senna read the summary once and folded it carefully. "This is what it is," she said. "Yes," Ki-jun replied. The boy took the paper from her and looked at it upside down. "It looks boring," he said. "That's good," Senna answered. They walked to the bus stop together. The boy waited, backpack slung over one shoulder, watching people pass. "Can I ask something?" he said. "Always," Senna replied. "When I'm older," he asked, "do they still decide for me?" She considered her answer carefully. "Less," she said, "but only if you learn how to speak clearly." He nodded. "I'm practicing." That night, Senna cooked dinner without setting an extra place. She ate slowly, sitting down this time. She didn't rush through it. She didn't stand. Afterward, she washed the dishes and left them to dry. She didn't go into his room. She didn't need to. The next visit was different, not in rule, in tone. The boy laughed once, sudden and bright, at something she said. The sound startled both of them. "That felt normal," he said. "Yes," she replied. "Is that allowed?" She smiled. "Yes." That was the outcome, not a return, not a victory, a life reshaped into something livable. Ki-jun stepped back further after that. He resigned from 2 boards. He declined 3 meetings. He stopped answering questions that wanted reassurance instead of responsibility. His name faded from certain rooms. He let it. One evening, he met Senna outside the visitation center. "I won't interfere anymore," he said. She studied him. "You mean it this time?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he doesn't need my power," Ki-jun replied. "He needs consistency." She nodded. "Thank you." The boy waited nearby, pretending not to listen. When Ki-jun left, he didn't watch him go. He looked at Senna instead. "Are we okay?" he asked. She knelt to meet his eyes. "We are real." He smiled at that. The days continued. The rules held. The clock still existed, but it no longer pressed against their chests. One afternoon during a visit, the boy drew a picture and slid it across the table. It showed two houses, not connected, not far apart. Between them was a path. "That's home," he said, pointing to the path. Senna felt her throat tighten. "Yes," she agreed. When time was called, he packed his bag calmly. "I'll see you soon," he said. "Yes," she replied, not hopeful, certain. Outside, the city moved as it always had. Inside, something fragile had learned how to stand, not because it was protected, but because it was understood. And that's where this story leaves them, not healed, not broken, but choosing clarity over illusion, truth over comfort, and agency over silence. If this story held you, if it made you pause, if it stayed with you longer than you expected, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Tell me what moment stayed with you.